BMNation.com.
I'm Jesse Coffey.
And I'm Kyle Wiley.
And we are
The Equalist.
All right, so I wanted to start off the topic and talk about Vince Vaughn. Sound familiar to you?
Yeah, he's that actor, right? What's he from? Wedding Crashers?
Wedding Crashers. He did that recent movie. I mean, I'm not going to say it was great, but it was still kind of funny and humorous. The Internship, where they go to Google, him and Owen Wilson. He does a lot of movies with Owen Wilson, actually.
They must be friends in real life.
They must be. But the good thing about Vince Vaughn, though, I don't know too much about Owen Wilson's political views, but Vince Vaughn recently came out and talked about his support for guns, Edward Snowden's a hero, and how the drug war's a load of crap.
I like him.
Yeah, that's a short way to put it. But I think one of the great things for Vince Vaughn is the way he stated it and the way he put it. He said it just doesn't make sense. He thinks everyone should be armed. He mentioned how the Second Amendment isn't for hunting, isn't just for burglary. It's for kind of to not a total misquote, but to paraphrase, it's for evil tyrannical governments to protect us from that. And no, that's probably the first time I've ever heard or even learned of a Hollywood actor coming out and saying something like that. Most Hollywood actors come out and say how they're anti-gun, yet they also make films where they use guns and blow off people's heads.
Yeah, it's a big misconception there. But I think that what he's saying is true, definitely. I think back in the day, this Second Amendment was put there to help you protect against an overpowering government. It was there as like a medium to help stop what happened in the past.
And I mean, and it's not like it's a far-fetched idea that the government can turn around and do that again. I mean, we've already seen it in other countries, and we're battling privacy issues now with the NSA and all these other things that have been going on. And I think what I liked a lot when he mentioned Edward Snowden, to kind of spin off from that, was how he was a hero. How in order to be a traitor, you need to be selling secrets to the enemy, like Russia or whoever we would deem like anti-American.
But he's giving it to the people.
The people, exactly.
And that was the right thing to do. Okay, you can call me some sort of crazy here, but Edward Snowden did the right thing. He showed us, the people, what the government was doing behind our backs and what they were hiding from us. The government may not like that, and that's their job, to kind of keep secrets, but we didn't and shouldn't have known like all this stuff that was happening, and now we know, and we need to do something about it.
And to even clarify more about the traitor, people do it for money, they do it for some maybe powerful position, they do it for some, or even protection. He definitely didn't get any protection. He didn't get any money out of this. He fled to Russia, because his government was trying to capture him from this. I'm not sure if this means now, since the NSA has been caught in doing things illegally, and for all that, I'm not sure if he's going to get to come back now, or
I don't think he's going to be able to come back.
Yeah,
because
that's the thing.
He's going to be arrested if he comes back, and they have to be strict on traitors. But they need to figure out that he's not a traitor and that what he did was for the good of the people. But now, do I think any government would ever do that? No. Like, Russia's not, if some Russian man goes out and exposes all these Russian secrets, they're going to do the same thing, and he's going to flee to us. It's going to be the same situation.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But it kind of to trickle back a little bit. Going back to the Second Amendment, he mentioned something that not a lot of people think of. When they think of mass shootings, they forget that most of them, besides maybe a few, have almost always occurred in gun-free zones. Places that ban guns, that say, hey, we're basically telling you no guns are going to be here, so why not come down and do a mass shooting spree? It's not like they're actually inviting them, but that's the thing that occurs. In Virginia Tech massacre, the shootings in Connecticut, they have one of the strictest gun laws in that state. Most of these places that have had shootings, mass shootings, have all occurred in places and buildings that don't have guns. And it kind of brought up the point and kind of brought up the argument, arming teachers, which I know you're not really a fan of, but I think it would work. It works in Switzerland. I'm pretty sure Switzerland's the place that does it, and I think it would be great. It would create a whole new sense of safety.
I think schools can have someone who is armed, and that's fine. But what if some teacher doesn't have a gun, doesn't want a gun, but they're a good teacher? We shouldn't not allow them to teach at a school.
I think at least 50% of the schools should be carrying.
I don't know. Like,
All right, one cop
even,
versus a couple kids with automatics. Who do you think's going to win that?
It's true, but the kids are afraid to come into the school because they see an armed police officer there.
I don't think that's really true. I mean, if they were afraid to go into the school to begin with, we wouldn't have as many mass shootings. Some of these shootings have taken places where there's been the school cop, but
typically those
really
places are at big
happen.
college universities where they only have a security department, and those are the kind of places where I think the students, being 18-year-olds and older, should be able to have carry permits and should be able to carry their own weapons.
That's the thing. People always mix up the argument because they forget that we can educate people on proper gun safety, proper gun use. Don't make the kid fear the gun. Make them understand it and treat it with respect. It's not a toy. It's not meant to be played with. It's meant to save your life. It's meant to be used properly. If you decide to go use, a hunting rifle to go hunting, at least know how to use it so you don't shoot a hunter that might be hunting in the woods around you. Proper education, proper tools, proper treatment really helps eliminate a lot of the issues, because the people that go out and get these guns, they're going to look for any kind of means to kill people regardless. They have a lot of mental issues. It's a mental health problem. It's not really a gun problem, because people always make the joke and the argument, if I sit my gun out on the porch and just left it there and no one came and touched it and it was just there, it's not going to probably fire. Someone has to be behind it to pull the trigger, and they have to have the intention or the mental instability to do that.
I think you're right. I think it's definitely a mental health issue more than it is a gun issue. I don't really see a gun issue. I see there are law-abiding citizens who carry guns who aren't killing people, and then there are people who have disorders or mental issues who are then killing people. So I don't see this gun problem, you said.
And a lot of these kids are on a lot of the antidepressant drugs too, like Ritalin, Prozac, Zoloft. I think we need to start taking a second look at some of these. I know they work for some people, but I think the statistic is like 1 out of 4 people don't end up benefiting from these antidepressants. It makes them feel worse. It makes them think darker. It doesn't help them. So we need to kind of maybe do more of a focus on mental health. When we talk about physical problems, we're like, oh yeah, let me sign your cast, let me help you up those stairs, oh, let me help you cross the road. But the moment you mention depression or something else, they're like, oh, you'll get through it. That's not really going to help them.
Yeah, especially at a young age, like teach them what's right and help them through these issues. Then maybe when they're an adult, they don't feel so isolated.
So maybe we can shift gears, kind of spinning off of, we didn't really talk too much about Vince Vaughn's drug war, besides the fact that he thinks it's a load of crap. But speaking of things that I think are a load of crap, Ross Ulbricht, Silk Road, he got arrested, and I think back in 2013, and now he has life imprisonment and no parole, no chance of parole at all. And for those of you who don't know, he ran an online, basically an online Amazon, I guess you could say, where there's a rating system. There's a rating system for whether or not the anonymous dealer was trustworthy, whether the product was good. So it gave people, incentives to go to certain dealers versus others, because they're like, all right, well, hypothetically, like Jimmy's kind of a prick. Jimmy spikes his stuff full of, rat poison and arsenic. I don't really want to go there. But Timmy, on the other hand, makes really good stuff. So I'm going to go with him. And it really cut down on overdoses. It cut down on crime because of it being online, user-based ratings. And I don't know how long he had the site going for. It was called Silk Road. I think it's kind of incredible that he got away with it for so long. But
I mean, I think it's definitely an interesting case, because you see someone selling illicit and illegal drugs, and do I necessarily think all these drugs should be illegal? No, but that's a whole nother issue. I think that he was selling these drugs and on the internet through a system that allowed people to be more safe about it, and kind of eliminated some of the sketchy black market deals on the corner, where instead now you're buying it online from apparently a reviewed, trusted site. I don't know how well the site system worked. I never even went there. I just know of its existence.
That's the thing. I never even heard of the Silk Road until he got arrested and it got brought up. That's what I think was kind of incredible about it, is how huge this was, yet still so unknown, unless you knew about it. And I think the thing that caused him so much controversy, whether or not, because a lot of people are doing, free Ross Ulbricht, and I agree, but what kind of took away from that was there was a potential he might have ordered a hit on 6 people or 5 people to
I don't
kill
know
them.
about this.
But yeah, it was an assassination thing. But what he got charged with, none of that never came up. That was never in the charge. It was for running the website, distributing drugs, in mass quantities, that type of thing. He got the typical drug dealer, big drug cartel type charges. He never ordered any hits. No one's come out and said, yeah, he definitely ordered someone to die. He literally did this to try and make it safer for people to get get their fix, get their habit, or even with things like pot and marijuana.
He did it to make money too, though.
Oh, of course, but I mean that's like
Let's not forget that.
But we also have to think, Big Pharma does it to make money too, and how many issues do you get to hear about? Whether it's on a station like this with radio, where you get the advertisements that you put in, and it's just like, oh, this will help you with your backache. After you get heat rash, stroke, potential chance and growth in cancer, diarrhea, you just name off all these really bad things you don't want happening to you, but it'll help your back.
Now, what do you think? I'd much rather see real regulation and like freedom to use of most of these drugs than see either the sketchy black market or even this online kind of can you trust this anonymous dealer sort of thing. I'd rather like see transparency and see like an actual regulated system.
It depends on regulation, how do you do it? Because the way that the government kind of goes about trying to regulate things, it's take spice for example. The way they regulate spice, they can't just outlaw spice because
they
it has to
change it.
contain the specific chemicals. So they just ban specific chemicals. So guess what? They they mix it with worse and worse chemicals on the drug. The legal drug, spice, K2, whatever, depending on where you go, or what they call it, they give it some, weird freaking name like Twister,
yeah,
whatever.
some cool name to entice kids.
And people aren't educated on this. They're just because they can't keep up with the government regulations on it, so they think, all right, this is the exact same pack that I got, the last couple times. It's probably going to be the same, but then the next time they do it, it completely messes their system up. They don't exactly know how to feel. And regulations in our country just doesn't seem to work too well to an extent. I think things like marijuana, that's easy to do. You legalize it, you tax it, and that's kind of the argument there, and it's kind of said and done. Because there's not a lot you can really do with pot in terms of lacing it besides
I'm
wasting
sure
other
big companies will.
I know back in the day that used to be, a very popular thing, lacing it with Coke or lacing it with that, but that stuff's more expensive than pot now. So it doesn't make sense.
I mean, I'm sure as big manufacturers get into this industry, like the big companies like Marlboro, Camel, or something, these big cigarette companies, they're going to try and mix stuff with their with the marijuana that they're going to grow, and I'm sure they already have factories set up, and they're going to mix chemicals with it so that's more addictive. I'm sure of it.
I believe that you're probably right on that. I'm pretty sure that they would do that. I wouldn't hold it past them to do things like that but then it will start to affect, the argument is marijuana addictive until people finally look into whether or not it is. It is psychologically addictive for some. I think it's if you have an addictive personality and it's hard for you to quit. Then pot is probably not the best choice for you if you think that you're going to do it every day, and because it can lead to that burnout situation. Because there's definitely a difference between stoners and burnouts. But I think a great example is Portugal. Do you know much about Portugal?
Not too much. Why? What are you getting at here?
They back in I think 2001 they decriminalized not just pot or psychoactives. All drugs, all of it. And, of course, our government and I think UK and a couple others that are very, anti-guns. Well, in some degrees. Anti-drugs, that it was going to fail, it was going to go rampant, and it didn't. Teen use dropped by over 300%. Use got incredibly low, and instead of arresting these people, the most the cops can do is if you're doing it in a public area or you're driving and doing it, because there's still laws on the books, even in our country, no,
DWI?
DWI?
Driving while impaired. No,
No, driving while intoxicated. So DUI, so driving
DUI.
under the influence.
Yep.
So, there's still going to be laws in place to cover that. And so Portugal kind of has that similar setup. So the most they can do is take it away, maybe fine you if you're being disrupted with it. Just like drinking in public. You don't really want to deal with some guy or some girl just getting really trashed outside your apartment when your kids are trying to sleep or something like to that effect. So there are laws there. And they treat these people, too. They offer them treatment. If you're a heroin addict and they catch you with it, they're not going to arrest you. They're going to say, hey, okay, don't do it here again. Do you want treatment? We'll help you. Or do you want to exchange your needles for clean ones? So that way they're not getting, HIV, hepatitis, all these other diseases you can get from reusing needles, because people think that they can reuse their own needles, but it's all that old blood and things that are in that needle that can get you the hepatitis and get you the HIV. You can give it to yourself in that kind of regard because it's just old, it's not sterilized, and they basically treated drug addiction as a health issue, and it's cut down uses. It takes away the fun, because a lot of the argument is with whether it's alcohol or drugs, it's fun to do bad things.
Exactly.
That's the argument.
It's that forbidden fruit. And I think what Portugal's doing is a good idea. I think when you decriminalize drugs, you take away the forbidden fruit from kids and adults, and by allowing them to do it and setting up laws that are only for the safety of others, like, keep people from driving on drugs, keep people from just openly doing them in public. Like, yeah, have cops. But if someone is a free-thinking adult person, they should be able to take these decisions into their own action and, decide whether, okay, I'm going to do this drug today. Maybe it's not good for my health, but that's my decision. I'm going to do it in my own home. And that's fine with me. If you want to hurt yourself in that way, it's no different than someone hurting themselves with cigarettes. I mean, if someone's going to drink themselves to death at night in their home in the U.S., it's no different. I don't understand how we have this strict hate for drugs in America.
We don't like it when people do things we don't like. That's kind of the...
Yeah, we can't control you, so we don't like this.
It's the same thing. You can even take it to a religious argument. Religious people don't like it when atheists go up to them and say, you're God's fake. And atheists don't like it when religious people go up to them and say, there's God, you need Jesus. Or you need Muhammad, you need some form of religion to find yourself in life. People don't like that, but we accept that people have different beliefs here, and we're okay with it. With drugs, I think of it as the same thing. You don't do drugs? Great. Then don't do drugs.
Exactly.
Plain and simple. You do drugs? Great. Or, well, I don't want to make it sound great. But if you do drugs, just do it in the safety of your own home or your friend's house or a place that says it's okay to do it here. Don't do it in the streets. Don't do it, on the road driving.
Be knowledgeable about it.
Be smart about it.
One thing I want to mention about this is that the way, our school systems are treating alcohol these days, at the college level, is I've noticed this now the past few years, is that they don't tell you not to drink underage. They tell you, we know you're going to do it. We know you want to experiment. Here's how to be safe about it. Here's what to do right. Here's how to not hurt yourself. Here's how to not get in bad situations. That's the right way to do it. That helps kids from, blacking out in the street or getting behind the wheel of a car when they're, cocked.
We're also the only country, I think, in the world where the drinking age is higher than, teen years.
Yeah,
at 21. I guess I can understand to some degree why it's 21, but I think if you're, it kind of goes back to that argument. If you can enlist in the military and go off and fight for your country and have a chance of dying, you should be able to sit down and have a beer before you do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think
and I think
it's
most
perfectly
people
fine.
would agree with that.
And it shouldn't be 21 just for that fact. It should be something that makes sense. Why can we send kids off to die in these wars, but they can't, drink? I don't want to encourage them to drink. I don't want to say, yeah, they definitely need to drink. But I'm saying they should have the ability to make that choice, because chances are they have already probably started doing it in high school going forward. Most kids now, especially in today's standards, because we don't educate kids enough. We're big binge drinkers. And that's what's causing a lot of deaths. They don't, have 1 or 2 beers. They'll have like 9, 10 within like a couple hours, and they don't understand what it's going to do to their system. They might be lucky enough to puke it out, but if they're drinking things like hard alcohol, that's going to get them alcohol poisoning. They're going to die.
It's because we have all this social media and TV where it highly encourages young people to go drink because you're going to have this awesome fun time. You're going to hook up with all these people. You're going to have these crazy parties. But then the reality of it is you're just drunk and you're going to have a bad time because you're over drunk. You're too intoxicated to even enjoy yourself.
I mean, people don't even notice the small, subtle things. Like, even in movies, any high schooler movie, like take Mean Girls, and they have that little Halloween party.
Yeah.
And, as a kid, I don't think most of us really thought that they were having red Solo cups to drink a bunch of grape soda or orange soda. Because people don't get crazy off soda unless you're, young and you got sugar rush.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're smart enough there. And the problem is high school, especially, they use marijuana as the gateway drug. Mm-hmm. If it's the gateway drug, this is how it's the gateway drug. You go into school textbooks and you read all about marijuana and how evil and horrible it's like a reefer madness with only a couple good things about it. And after that, kids try it and they're like, well, that was a lie. I wonder what else my school lied about me too. And then the dealer, who probably has more than just pot, is going to be like, oh, you liked pot? How about some Coke or something else? How about acid? And they're going to try these things because they're like, well, my school system failed me. They lied to me. I'm still not using imaginary numbers in real life, so I might as well try things. And they're not educated on it. And I mean, there is plenty of websites that have, the pros and the cons, but our school systems are failing our kids and how they're educating people. They're failing our kids in how they're trying to treat people.
I agree with that. I think that when people are lied to at a young age, they don't trust what they learned and they want to learn for themselves. And this is another reason why if you get rid of the black market, you get rid of that situation like you just said where, oh, you liked pot, maybe you like Coke, it's a little stronger, and you're like, okay, but you don't know how bad these things can actually be for you. Where if there was regulation and you got rid of this black market, you have to go to X store to buy this. It has to be at X age, and they're gonna, you're gonna have to learn about it before you can just buy it from a guy off the street.
I mean, because like the statistic was, it's easier to get pot than it is to get alcohol because of the restrictions, because of you need to go there and present yourself as an age that you can drink at, Mm-hmm. And I think if our country was going to do it, we'd have to legalize it, and when the law passes, have it be legalized immediately. Don't give the cartels time to store off and cash off their money. Don't give the cartels any time to move any product or do anything to kind of get away with what they had been doing, because a lot of the cartels, they aren't doing it strictly for money. They don't care if the kid's dying. They don't care if their client doesn't come back after they spent thousands and thousands of dollars after years of use. Mm-hmm. They only want the money, and the cartels are violent. I mean, we even gave them guns and ammunition in Fast and Furious, which is a whole other discussion. But we have to do it immediately. Don't give them any time. Legalize it immediately. If we were to get to that point, I don't think we're going to see a full legalization of all drugs for a long time. I think pot's probably the first step, and then I'd like to see it kind of spin off from that and go into hemp for the reusable energy. Because for people that don't know, hemp's just a cousin of pot. You can't smoke it. I mean, you can, but you'd have to smoke a telephone pole length to get you any form of high, and the most you're going to do is just give yourself a headache.
People aren't getting high off hemp. It's just an industrial kind of agricultural
And they
crop.
only banned it because it was competing with the lumber companies and other companies, because it was a great biodiesel fuel. It's a great energy. It's a food. It's a clothing. It's a fiber. We completely legalized it for World War II to make ropes for the boats because it was stronger than what they were using, and they wanted the best of the best for the war. And then as soon as the war ended, guess what we did? We made it illegal, but we import loads of hemp products. So I don't understand if it's such a bad thing.
The whole
why do we
hemp thing
import it?
confuses me, but I still see people my own age who think, oh, you can smoke hemp because this is what they think hemp is. They think hemp is just the stalk of the marijuana plant. And I'm like, No, it's like a taller, different plant that's in the same like cannabis family as marijuana, but it's a different
I mean,
plant.
even
It doesn't
salvia
get you
is part of
high.
the family.
Yeah, and it has tons of good resources. Like people buy hemp clothes, hemp rope. There's like a lot of pharmaceutical uses for hemp. It's
I mean,
like
yeah, you can take the seeds from hemp, put it in your tea, and it helps with constipation.
there you go.
All right, so shifting gears, I think there was a topic about a particular state that you had kept
Yes,
mentioning to me.
I wanted to talk about Nebraska. They just got rid of their death penalty, and which was pretty surprising because they are considered like a strongly conservative state.
Overall, yeah, I'd say.
Now, they removed the death penalty, and it's becoming this new trend that death penalty isn't popular. And I can understand that because there's a lot of people who are innocent on death row, or people who have been found innocent later on that have been on death row for years and years and years. But I can still understand the use of a death penalty as long as what they did was severe enough and there's like real proof of it. Like if a guy runs into a crowded place and kills 6 people and 100 people saw him, he's guilty. He did it, he's guilty, death penalty. Or if, you run into a home and shoot a mother and her 2 kids, and there was a camera in the house and it watched you do it, you're guilty, you did it, death penalty. But now, if it's just some sort of, they found a hair on a scene at a house where someone died, and murder is a capital offense and the state law is death penalty, no, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be 100% sure, and a part of that issue is the DNA. There's a big push. I forget the name of the group, and I wish I could remember them, but they're pushing for people to always have access to get their DNA to clear their name. Because the courts can demand it from you, the courts can take it from you. But in certain states, not all,
Yeah, they
in
can
certain
deny
states,
you.
they can deny you the right to prove yourself innocent. And you figure that if that's the biggest way you could incriminate yourself is with your DNA. So if you're certain that you didn't do it, even if they're crazy enough to believe that they didn't do it and they did, let them take their DNA. They're offering it to you. They're offering a part of them that most people don't want to part ways with. Fingerprinting, saliva swabs. People are usually uncomfortable having that done unless they choose to do it. And in most circumstances, especially if you know that death penalty is going to be hanging over your head and you believe you were framed, or you know that you didn't do it, these people get denied, and then we find out, years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, oh yeah, by the way, they didn't do it. And we're like, oh well.
Well, a lot of these cases were back before like DNA evidence was like such a strong part of the criminal justice system.
Which is true.
And most of these people like on death row, they did something and they didn't like really check DNA, or they did, but it was in a much simpler way. Like the technology wasn't really there yet. And now when we go back and they go through this process of appeals, like please recheck my DNA, like please do this, and they do, and they find out, oh, okay, so you had, you both had A positive, but it was different blood, and they're like, oh, because X million people have A positive, but back then that was kind of enough. If you were a suspect, out of all these range of people, and you had a similar blood type, and
we can do it so much faster and quicker now. I forget the woman's name. She's become a very popular trending figure. She's like the youngest female billionaire now because of her extensive research in blood, where now you don't have to get your whole vein sucked out through a needle. You can just, it's almost like for those that have diabetes would understand, taking their finger prick.
That's really cool.
And just doing that and getting a little drop of blood, and they can tell you everything. And she's been able to perfect that and make it a lot easier, quicker. You don't have to wait a few hours. Now it could be done within like a few minutes, depending on the equipment that they have access to them. So we have ways to quickly clear someone's name and not have them sit around wasting taxpayer dollars for 5, 6, 11 years, because it's more expensive to do the death penalty than it is to have someone in life in prison.
I don't see how that can be possible.
It is possible.
How can there be someone
in prison? There's appeal processes. There's so much that goes into killing somebody in a legal, humane fashion as we do it. But I mean, you also did mention this, and this was off the the show how I don't know if you remember the state, but they said that they can do death by firing squad
Ah,
now.
yes, death by firing squad. It's one of those Midwest states. I can't remember which one
It
right
it sounds
now.
like it, the cowboy country.
But it's kind of an interesting concept
I'm okay
because
with it.
it's a quick, painless way to die, and it doesn't really mess up. You know what I mean?
Well,
You have a few guys with guns, and they're aiming at the person. He's whatever, blindfolded or doing something. I don't really know how the system is, and you get shot pretty much in the head, and you're out. You're done. Where these chemicals, sometimes they inject you. They cost a lot of money.
sometimes it can take up to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's a slow, painful death. I've actually read a lot about those cases where that happened.
No, but the companies that make these chemicals too engineer them in this like perfect way where it's not painful, it's quick apparently, and it costs a lot of money for these drugs. Where
That was actually one of the arguments the Nebraska governor made as to why we should keep the death penalty in that state because of how much they just got. They had like a lot of these needles filled with these injections, and I thought that was absolutely hysterical that he used that for an argument. I'm like, oh, great, so you have a lot of ways to, kill inmates and stuff. That's why we should keep it.
Just sell those drugs to other states that still have this lethal injection. I mean,
yeah, that sounds about right.
I just think that, yeah, maybe it's a little dark to think of shooting someone, but you have to think these people are typically on death row for a reason. And it's a quick, painless death. It's not really, it's a little brutal looking, but it's fast, it's over.
Well, my response to that is if you don't like it, don't watch.
True. But
you don't have to go to where they're doing the act, and sometimes they don't even let you watch. The only people that might be allowed to watch are those that were
affected by
affected, like the family's victim, that type of thing. And I honestly think it's perfectly cool. If you're like me and you believe in an eye for an eye mentality, like if you screw me, I'm going to screw you back type of thing. I mean, depending on the circumstance, there's some things I just kind of brush off and say whatever. But in terms of, killing, death, those type of things, if they were willing to go into a room, kill 6 people with a gun, and not even think twice about it, I think they should definitely be able to look at the end of a barrel before they die. They should have that fear, that pain, or at least accept the fact that they're getting what's coming to them. I'm totally cool with the firing squad. It's cheap and it's more effective in most circumstances. It's not like they're going to go off in a long range and have a sniper use them as a target dummy. They're just going to go up and do it. They're going to get it done and say, get out of the way. We're taking care of this now. No more waiting around and strapping you to the chair, making it this like dramatic process. It's like a play.
And the problem with it is that it takes like 40 years. Like there's all these appeals, like every 10 years or whatever, they appeal and they get it pushed back and whatever happens. And then they're in prison for this whole time period, and then they get this like amazing last meal and then they go die. What is that about? Why do they deserve that?
Well, I mean, I guess it's like our way of saying you can eat all of this because you're gonna die and crap it out anyway. So it's
wasting money.
I mean, it's actually kind of funny though to read what some of these people have for last meal. Some of them do something as simple as like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with a glass of milk because it's just something that they
were
connect
nostalgic
with.
about. Yeah,
and then others go extravagant and get like the turkey dinner with lobster and get as much food as possible. Probably mostly to just cling on life for that last few seconds. And someone made a point to me a few days ago, actually, that if we got rid of the death penalty altogether and just left it with the inmates, let the inmates take care of them. If they're evil and responsible, the inmates will probably take care of them. I mean, think of Jeffrey Dahmer. Did not take them that long to kill him.
Yeah, I think though, I don't know if I believe that inmates should take care of each other. We don't need to encourage murder in jail.
Oh, definitely not. No. But I mean, that's what happens to a lot of these people.
It does happen. They know it's going to happen. That's why a lot of people don't want to go to jail. I think it's good to think of jail as a bad, scary place because it makes people not want to commit crimes, so they go to jail.
But it's only really a bad, scary place if you're a non-violent drug user, because that's who fills most of our jail cells. And if you want to get really into it, it's a race issue because blacks get arrested the most, then get get appeared in court the most for these cases, and then sent off to jail. And it's like 63% higher than any other race, even though for most cases it's fairly equal among most races of drug use, at least according to a statistic I read a few years ago. I'm not sure how much it's changed, but it's still prominent that blacks get arrested the most, they get treated the worst with drug crimes, and most of them are nonviolent. Most of them are just doing it, and they get caught, and then they get sentenced to jail for 5, 10, 25 plus years, sometimes even life in jail for smoking a joint or selling a joint to somebody else. Instead, those spaces could be used for people that are violent, your rapists, your murderers, people that were going to commit mass crimes and murders. These people should be the ones rotting in the cells. These people should be the ones that are, around other people either as cruel or crueler than them. That's a fear that they should have to deal with, not just some kid that's fresh out of high school that could have had a whole life ahead of them.
Another problem with that is that, so we have these non-criminal, like drug offenders, people who are breaking the law, they're only selling drugs, they're not hurting anyone, and they go to jail because the law puts them there, and then they become hardened and they act out in jail to survive, and then when they get released, they're even worse people.
Yeah, I'd love to see like a new statistic now as to whether or not people that are nonviolent drug users that get put in jail, now that we have, since we have so many of them to ask, have they committed more crimes before or after jail? Did they continue, or did it change them? Did it make them stop doing what they were doing because they didn't want to go back there? And most studies say that people that end up going to jail come out and they either fall back into what they were doing before or worse. And it's always that or worse that kind of makes you question, are we doing it right? And most people are going to say, no, we're not.
I think it all depends on how long they were there. If someone goes to jail for like 18 months and gets out, typically it was for a small offense, and a lot of them change their ways because, like, wow, jail was like the worst thing that ever happened to me. I don't want to go back there. But when it's a more severe thing and they put them in there for a long time and they have to like actually adjust and survive in jail and become a part of this scene where all these criminals are put together, I think they probably either fall back into what they were doing before or are worse.
And a lot of it, what they don't consider with nonviolent drug users that are in jail is, all right, so say they were 18, so they can get tried as an adult for sure. They were 18, and they get arrested. The only life that they remember knowing is what they were doing when they were 18. Doing drugs with their friends, or, just having a good time, doing that type of thing. They didn't really get to go to college, or they didn't get to learn any really useful skills in high school. And it's hard for them to get a job now because they're a felon. And most places aren't going to hire these felons to do certain jobs, especially if they have a history of drug use now. So this person now has a few options. Do they go back and start doing more drugs and go into the easy market because it's illegal now and it's easy to get into if you find your connection and make it that way and keep it within, certain means? Or do they try and work for 20, 30 years just to get their name built up enough where somebody might hire them and pay them, 20 or so dollars, which is, is a lot for people our age if you make $20, but that's a lot for people our age if you make $20. When you get to a certain age, you want to be able to make a lot more depending on the job frame, depending on what you want in life.
Yeah, if you want to support a family and have like the normal things that
the American dream,
that standard living, then yeah, you need to make more than that. You need to, be a little more successful, and it's hard for these people.
And it's not like they get encouraged to go use, their libraries. Most of them are going to start using the weights to stay fit and stay active. They're going to enjoy the amount of time that they can get outside because they're within confined concrete, steel walls, brick, you name it. So these people turn into hardened criminals by the time they come out, and they get the prison tats and all that other stuff.
Prison tats. Yeah, I think that it's an issue, and it's something we need to fix for sure.
But I think Nebraska's definitely taking a good stance on the death penalty, and I hope other states follow suit, because it's really nice to see that even for a conservative state, or at least an overall conservative state, to come out and do this. I think that's a really good example that the GOP definitely needs to follow, because there's not really when you hear the term GOP now, it's definitely been spun to such a negativity that it's even hard for me to think of them. All right, where's the good Republican here? When they're all about the same overall. Even Rand Paul has retracted a lot of his statements and flip-flopped, and he was supposed to be the hopeful GOP that could change the party, and now he's just another sheep in the herd, you know?
What I think is funny is there's so many different divisions now. You have the
evangelical conservatives, Christian conservative. You have regular conservative, moderate conservative,
libertarians. You have Tea Partiers,
liberal conservatives.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean that's the argument with the Libertarian Party too. If you're going to be libertarian, you have to make sure you're libertarian enough for them to like you. You have to be their kind of libertarian, or they're not going to vote for you. If you have one issue they don't agree with, they will not vote for you, and that's a problem. People are just so convoluted in thinking that they're the only ones that know it all and the only ones that are right. They can't admit when they're wrong, and it's causing more issues.
I think there's just too much separation. Why can't we just have another party? Maybe that's another issue.
Take your pick. I mean, we have the Green Party.
No, I mean another party on the ballot.
Well, that's never going to happen. If you want that to happen, then you have to convince everybody to start just voting just to fix it. Just vote for the candidate you think is going to get that 5% to make the shift.
And the problem is people don't care.
No, I mean, isn't it a majority of our country doesn't vote?
Yeah, no, honestly, I think it's about 30 or 40% that does vote. So you have around like that 60-something% that doesn't vote.
Care.
They don't care whether they maybe are in a position where they can't vote, and I understand that, or they just don't care.
No, it probably because our incarceration rate's so high, and that's probably a lot of the lump that gets thrown in. Felons can't vote.
True. I think a lot of it, though, like I know people personally who just don't care because they don't think it makes a difference.
And I mean, I can admit I've kind of become that person. I felt I've been cheated out of the election that I've gotten to vote for, and I've felt cheated out of a lot of the primaries that I've gotten to help campaign for, be a part of. It just doesn't seem worth it. It doesn't seem that it's working, and I don't know. It's something else to debate issues and talk about them and what we should do or what we can do to fix them. But it's a whole other argument, and it takes like hundreds of years to really perfect a style of government that works, that can dictate and not be a dictator or a ruler, but more of a guider, something that's there to help support the people, not be a bane in the people's side.
If you want to get people to vote, you got to educate them. It's plain and simple.
You have to make politics fun, and it's not really. Have you ever watched, like Parliament argue over in the UK? It's like the funniest thing I've ever watched. They laugh at each other, they mock each other. It's like a sitcom, and they just completely belittle the other side. But people watch it because it's fun, and it gets them into politics. I'd rather see this than this whole, well, I'm being all professional. Nope, I didn't mean to say exactly what I just said, 5 minutes ago. And we make it this political game. It's more of a really, really convoluted, confusing, stringy mess of a game where everything's connected, but unless you understand everything to some degree, you can't understand the one thing that you truly want to get involved in.
I think if you take away the corruption image that politicians in America have, every politician, like you talk to anyone like, oh, he's a politician, oh great, he's stealing money from us, you know what I mean? If you take away that image and bring back some sort of like, politics are fun, it's a deep rooted part of our society, we're like a big political country, then bring in good honest people and get a more realistic political scene.
That's
big money.
Definitely education's a big problem. I know a lot of my friends were a big supporter of Ron Paul, and then after he got booted out, it was between Mitt Romney and Obama, and they're like, oh, God. Because a lot of people, if they did their homework, they would understand they're basically practically the same candidates, just, different ages, different skin colors. That was the only difference I could find. Besides Mitt Romney hating gay people, he really didn't like gay people. That was the only thing that was really different about them in terms of voting and everything else. But they were going to vote for Obama simply because Mitt Romney appeared more of a sleazy, cheap politician. He had the slick back hair. He was a businessman who basically crapped on the little guy and to make his money. And they're like, I don't want to vote for that kind of guy. I might as well go with the lesser two evils. And I'm like, well, evil's still evil. And even with that argument, they still weren't willing to change. So the only thing I had to tell some of my friends was one issue I know they felt strongly about, whether it was legalizing pot or immigration or how they felt on the war, to go get them to vote for a third-party candidate, just to get them to shift their vote away from the same old status quo. I wanted to see maybe we can get 5%, even if I only got 30 or so people convinced on this idea, that at least I felt like I made some kind of a difference. And now it's just like, well, most likely it's going to be another Bush versus Clinton. I really see that as the case, and I think it's going to be Jeb Bush with like Marco Rubio as his VP, or something like that. A young charismatic guy. It won't be Rand Paul because of his how over religious he is. He'll scare away more people than help. And it'll be Hillary Clinton and somebody else. I'm not sure who she would pick as her running mate. It's going to be another Bush versus Clinton, and I'd be very shocked to see it be anybody else. I absolutely would be.
I think I still want to see some people come out of the woodworks. I want to see people mess up and say things they shouldn't say, and see how the candidates change a little bit here. There are people still coming out, which is a little interesting. But I think the thing that makes me so mad about politics recently is that people either won't vote for the other person, like a third-party candidate, because they don't have the chance of winning. It's not necessarily about winning. It's about getting them enough votes that you can bring in another party. And then the other thing is that people feel that nothing is like going to help. So there's no chance of changing anything. But we live in this country where you're supposed to like encourage the idea that, you know, we elect these people so we can change something, so we can make a difference. But
exactly. I mean, here's the really funny thing. It's not funny. It's more sad, but it's funny for me because I'm cynical. The thing that amazes me is how Congress's approval rating just keeps going down and down and down, and maybe one or two names change, but it's still the same people that we've had for like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. You know, these old, typically old white guys, you know, that are in there doing the same stuff that no one agrees with, yet no one goes out and votes for the other guy. Maybe it's because the candidates they get presented with are basically the same status quo, or there's just not enough people that are willing to put their name out there to be scrutinized. So, you know, we have a fear of being mocked in this country now. We can't just joke and brush it off anymore. People are like, oh, you called me fat, or oh, you called me too skinny. You know, I'm offended. It'd be like, no, suck it up. And just go out there and do it. Make the difference. Make the change. Ignore everyone that's trying to belittle you, because if you give in to that, you're never going to accomplish what you truly desire, what you truly want, because you're willing to be put down by all these people that are going to be roadblocks in your way. And that's the problem with politics. The moment you start talking about hot button topics like abortion, marriage, or the war, drugs, you name it, there's always those people that come out and say, no, you're wrong, and they just get on your case and start yelling and belittling you. They'll call you racist or sexist. They'll just start throwing remarks at
I like
you.
those arguments.
Well, yeah, but I think the only reason they do that is because they don't have any logical argument.
No, but sometimes those arguments, you know, you can secretly like kind of give someone a new opinion. You know, you get them all riled up and they're all crazy, and you throw something out there like, oh, I never thought about it that way.
You have to be able to argue from their side, and sometimes it's really hard to, because if you're a logical thinker, if you think logic, you know, like Star Trek, if you know that logic mindset, people will argue illogically to you on things that don't make sense. Like I mean, there was a time and place where everyone in the world believed that the world was flat, and it took years, hundreds of years, to convince them, no, it's round. You know, it's like subtle things, small things. You can show them the proof, you can show them the truth, but sometimes they'll just look at it and be like, nope, I don't think so. And be like, but this is the fact. And they'll be like, nope, I don't agree.
I mean, those people are stubborn, and it's going to take a long time.
And those are the people that keep voting.
I mean, I think that our generation, though, is becoming a little bit more like free think, like look things up for yourselves, where before it was kind of you took what you were told and that's how you learned. So if these people are researching and doing their own information finding, fact checking, then maybe that will push towards better educated decisions.
Oh, there's a book, I forget the name of the author, but it's called Informing Ourselves to Death, and it was written, I think, in the 70s or the 80s, within that time frame, because television was getting more prominent in people's homes. That was becoming the new. You're going to see television in everyone's home, colored TV in everyone's home, and the thing that he pointed out in his book was that we have so much information. This is the first time. That was the first time we ever saw way too much information versus little information. And so now we have the internet. It's grown. It's expanded. We have it in our pockets. We have it in our earlobes with like little listening devices. We have it in our cars. We have it everywhere. There's some form of news source or an opinion, anything. And now we have so much information. It's really hard to tell people, yeah, I'm right, when another person can show them 20, 30 articles, even if the source isn't accurate or validated, of why they might be right. And we just have way too much information now. It's hard to shift through and find things that are unbiased. People are always going to be biased, which is true, but I appreciate the articles that people can post where they only show a hint of their cynicism, but overall it's just trying to educate you and understand both sides. When the article argues both sides, that's the article you want to read. If you're only reading, yeah, the cops are the heroes, or yeah, the cops are the villains, find a new source. Find the one what the cops just did, not in a negative or positive fashion. Just talk about what they did, talk about what the criminal did, regardless of what the issue is, and just read it. And then find other articles that are biased and pick apart, okay, this is where it matches, this is where it doesn't. And it sounds like a lot of effort, but really you can do it depending on how quick of a reader you are within like 10-15 minutes, just to have a good basic understanding of what you feel, and what you feel is important to you.
I think the one problem with finding like both sides nowadays is that whatever's like the popular side, that's all the major credible sources. So like when you're looking, you're gonna find like
Fox News or CNN.
Not even that. I'm just saying you're gonna find like all these major newspapers or news stations covering the majority, and you really have to sift back like to find the other side. Like really like weed through the popular crap that everyone wants to hear and find the other side, so you can get a little bit of both cases, so you can really compare and make your own decisions instead of being told what to think by popular media.
All right, so unlike the previous episode, it's not going to be the full hour. It's going to be a little bit shorter, just due to some complications that we have to deal with. But we'll be back next week on Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yes, we will. We'll see you then.
We will see you then.
IPMNation.com.